Hey listeners, today I want to tell you about an incredible company that's revolutionizing brain health and performance, ComWaves. ComWaves is dedicated to helping individuals achieve optimal brain health and enhance mental performance through innovative and proven methods. Whether you're an athlete aiming to boost your game, a professional seeking peak productivity, or simply someone who wants to maintain a sharp and healthy mind, ComWaves has the solutions you need. Led by the expert Dr. Doug Cowan, ComWaves offers personalized programs and cutting edge technologies designed to unlock your brain's full potential. They provide comprehensive cognitive assessments and at home treatment plans tailored to support your brain health. Plus, they can even set up brain health and performance centers right at your facility. ComWaves specializes in brain technology solutions for issues like anxiety, ADHD, head trauma, and other central nervous system disorders. You can trust that you're receiving the best care and technology to support your specific needs. If you're interested in learning more, reach out to ComWaves today. Visit their website at comwaves.com or send Dallas an email at dallas@comwaves.com. That's comwaves.com, or email dallas@comwaves.com. And don't miss their podcast episode with PGA mental performance coach Rick Sessinghaus, available on the ComWaves podcast. Don't miss out on the opportunity to transform your brain health and performance with ComWaves. Get in touch with them now and take the first step towards a brighter, sharper future. You're listening to the Identity Sports Podcast, where we dive into the world of faith, sports, and inspiration with athletes from across the country. I'm your host, Zach Vogel. Hey guys, welcome to the Identity Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Vogel, a former athlete with over 15 years of nonprofit experience in the sports ministry arena. In today's episode, we dive into the lives of sports ministry power couple Kevin and Shannon O'Brien. Kevin is the women's soccer coach at Lipscomb University, while Shannon coaches women's golf. We will dive into their journeys of playing professional soccer all the way to becoming a coach and how they truly developed a discipleship program within their D1 sports program. Let's get started. Kevin and Shannon, thanks for joining and taking the time to be here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to be here. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, awesome. No, it's our pleasure to have you. We connected with Shannon actually on our Instagram, and we were able to kind of follow along the women's golf journey. And it's so cool to come together and to see actually a couple living out sport the way that God intended it to be, which is just another tool to share the gospel. So we want to kind of dive in. Kevin, you played professional soccer for quite a bit. Shannon, you did as well. Tell us a little bit about that experience for you and how you two actually met.
Yeah. You want to take it or me?
You can start.
All right. Well, yeah, it was a long time ago, and ultimately, where we originated, kind of our relationship is where we kind of learned sports ministry, and it was with a ministry called Missionary Athletes International, and we were playing with a soccer team called the Charlotte Eagles. And it was there that I was playing on the men's team. She was playing on the women's team. And ultimately, we learned what it looked like to serve Jesus with the game of soccer. And, I'd come into it really without a framework of what that looked like. Shannon probably way more than I had an idea what that looked like. But, after spending years a part of that ministry where guys that just love the Lord and were gifted in different ways, were living out their faith on the soccer field. It kind of, for me, man, it was exactly what I needed in my life at that point in time. And, and I was coaching at secular schools at that time, playing and coaching. And I just had this, overwhelming sense that God was calling me to kind of integrate in coaching what I was able to experience as a player with the Charlotte Eagles. So we met, we courted, we dated in Charlotte, and ultimately God, presented us this opportunity here at Lipscomb to kind of put into practice what we had learned for so many years with Missionary Athletes International and the Charlotte Eagles. So Shannon, I don't know what you want to piggyback on that, but
yeah. I mean, in a nutshell, how we met, we were in a co-ed class where they brought the men's team and women's team in, and they were actually walking us through what they call sports ministry training. And I happened to sit in a row, and over on the far end was this guy. And I was just there for soccer. My heart and goal at that moment.
I was too. Clear it up.
Yeah.
And he said hello, and a few weeks later we started to hang out. And what was really unique about that environment was just we had added accountability. I played soccer at the University of Arizona, where it was a great experience, but obviously a state school and a big school at that. And so to be immersed into a community of people who are all seeking and striving to serve the Lord was just a completely different culture from what I was coming out of. And while I was plugged in with Athletes in Action in college, to have, about 30 men and, 25 women who were all seeking to know the Lord deeper and to use their sport as a platform to serve the Lord, was just an incredibly special environment. And they're still going. There's actually been 9 couples that have come out of the Charlotte Eagles.
Okay, awesome.
We jokingly nicknamed it eHarmony for Eagle Harmony. But we were the first couple to get married out of that, and to now be coaching and serving the Lord as sports ministers. I think if either one of us was told that day we'd be doing this, we would have kind of chuckled and been like, wow, really? Like, how is that going to happen?
Yeah.
So if they told me golf, I would have been like, wait, what?
Yeah. So you guys are the standard for that program now, the power couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're honored. I don't know. There's a lot of people in that program.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's so cool to hear stories of organizations and programs like that. So you both end up at Lipscomb University, coaching women's soccer together. You have that training, you come into coaching. How did you lay the groundwork for your program there?
Yeah, well, I mean, having the experience in Charlotte that we did, I remember the day I was on campus for the interview with the AD and casting a vision of how you can marry kind of essentially sports ministry and Division I athletics together, and chasing after Jesus ultimately being the goal, right? We want to know God and make Him known. That's our heart, but at the same time being highly competitive at the Division I level, because there are a lot of organizations that are they're great at the sport and they're maybe not so great at the faith component, or they're great at the faith component and not so great at the sport. It was like, we want to be excellent at both, because I think God calls us to excellence. And I just remember casting that vision to the AD. Ultimately, he hired us and we stepped into it kind of already having an idea of like, okay, what does faith on the field look like, living out our faith? And Shannon did an amazing job with the girls on the team of basically teaching them what it looks like to serve God in soccer, because most of them were elite soccer players who went to church on Sunday and they were Christians and believers, but how to kind of incorporate the two had never been taught to them. And that was kind of what we set out to do. And lo and behold, after recruiting cycle after recruiting cycle, we just kept getting stronger believers who love the Lord and stronger as a team. And it's just, it's been able to we've been able to sustain success because God's continued to raise up the right people in our program, and totally different recruiting philosophy than the rest of the world. And, God's sovereign. In the end, the players that are supposed to end up on my soccer team or her golf team, they're going to end up there. And obviously we've got to work hard and we've got to do our part, but we also have to trust that the Spirit's going to lead the recruits that we're recruiting to this place as much as, we're going to work hard to find the best talent.
Yeah. And you're really kind of doing it backwards. I mean, there's so many manuals of how to run a successful soccer program or D1 program, but essentially what you're doing is basically throwing that out the window and asking God, okay, where do you want us to move today? And what do you want us to know in this situation? And just being super in tune to how the Spirit is leading you. And it's so cool to see, what you're saying. You've been, the ASUN Coach of the Year 3 times. You guys have won. The success is there. So not only are you doing sport differently, but you're also been successful in it and at the Division I level. And what do you think that's a testament to?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, I will say Obi's an incredible leader. Like, talks about different spiritual gifts, and understanding how you're wired and then living into that wiring, I think is part of the partnership and how God's, created us, but also resting your worth and identity in him, but then also partnering with discovering what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses. And, to Obi's credit, I got to coach alongside of him for 9 years, which I honestly, I was asked recently by a fellow, now Power 4 coach who was like, hey, who's your kind of coaching mentor? Like who's your go-to person? And I was like, honestly, it's my husband. And I recognize I'm really fortunate to be able to say that, but from a peer, just a fellow coworker, I really have respected Obi and how he's led. For him to be able to step in, he was coaching men and then shifted to coaching women. And we have a daughter and a son, so it's been sweet to just also see how that correlates to how he handles and leads. But, from a recruiting lens for both of us, recognizing, yes, God's sovereign, recognizing, okay, I have a role to play in this. And so my discernment, my prayer life, my intentionality to make sure that I am looking for the strongest talent, but I'm also not going to water down what we're doing on the faith side. And as we've intentionally just kind of stepped out in faith, and I will say, I think it's taken courage at times. I know it has for me on the golf side. I don't know for you, but it is a little bit of knowing I'm going to name Jesus here, and that might actually turn somebody away. And I might really want this kid, and man, I hope they really like Jesus. And it's okay if they don't like Jesus, because they may not know Jesus yet, but are they at least open to coming into an environment where Jesus will be introduced to them, and respectfully just meet them right where they're at. It's totally okay if, they're not even sure, if they're atheist, agnostic, or, a believer, but not really sure because of some wounding or some things, that has happened in their journey. Our heart is to meet them in that, but ultimately we're looking at Obi calls it the both and I've echoed that as well. Both player who wants an elite Division I experience and wants the faith-centered, Christ-centered opportunity to be grown and shaped in the knowing and being his child and loving the Lord with your heart.
Yeah, I'd piggyback and say our recruiting pitch, we almost try to scare the kids away with all that we're going to do, right? It's there's going to be Bible study, there's going to be service in the community, there's going to be mission trips, there's going to be things like that, if you're up for that, awesome. And if not, that's okay too. And we've kind of had this kind of 80-20 principle. We love 80% of the group to be, bought in to serving the Lord and really following his ways. And then we're open to that 20% that, like Shannon alluded to, that might not have a relationship with him. And one of the greatest things ever is when you bring in a player, you say, hey, this is the environment. If God's leading you here, we'd love to have you. And they don't really know what they're stepping into. And then boom, you see transformation in their lives, and they come in one person, they leave, chasing after the Lord. There's nothing better than that. That winning a championship is fun, but it's fleeting. Seeing a girl who came in not knowing the Lord, leaving on fire for the Lord, that is the win. So for us, that's what we continue to put as of greatest importance. And it allows us to, again, have a different measuring stick for what success looks like. It's crazy. We didn't go to the NCAA tournament last year and probably had the best team we ever had as a program. But there were so many wins that God gave us along the way. And the players and the coaches can look back at what an incredible success it was as a season. Again, in the world's eyes, we fell short. In our eyes, oh boy, did God do some amazing things, and was it incredible. So that kind of allows us to kind of recruit the way we do and just trust in the Lord the way we have.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you guys go on mission trips together as a team. Is that something that's required of all the players? And what would you say is one of the coolest experiences that you firsthand witnessed on one of those trips with the team?
You go first, and then I'll piggyback.
Yeah. So it's not required. Like Bible studies, we don't make them. We're not going to force, them into anything or coerce them into something that they don't want to be a part of. It's like, hey, here's opportunity for growth. We're going to give it to you. Here's an opportunity to kind of step out of our comfort zone that we live in here in Nashville, and yeah, just kind of unplug from our phones and our computers and just go live into whatever God has for us. And it's incredible. So we've had trips where there've been 7 girls that have gone. We've had trips where there have been 20 girls that have gone. So the size of the team that goes varies every year. So if God puts it on your heart to go, then let's go. And we're going to take whoever goes. And the on-ground work that we're doing is going to look different depending on the size of the team that goes. But it's incredible. And the stories, the amazing stories, I could talk for a day, telling you all the amazing stories that transpire on these trips. It's just incredible. So I don't think I have one specific one I'll share. I'll let Shannon maybe think of one of those. But it's just, again, the girls, it's funny, the new girls, the girls that maybe haven't gone before, oftentimes think that they're going to go and help change the lives of others. And they do an amazing job serving. But ultimately what God does is he changes their hearts. So when they come back, they're stronger in their faith. They're more surrendered to him. They're seeing the world in a different way that ultimately the Lord would want them to see it. So it's just beautiful to be able to be a part of so many trips with so many girls and so many teams, and to see so many lives just kind of transformed for the kingdom. It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, for me, so uniquely, I was the director of spiritual formation for our female athletes. The last, I guess it was last year is the first year I wasn't involved full time in that capacity, but I did it for about 10 years. And I went with, volleyball to Rio de Janeiro, basketball to Dominican Republic, women's golf in 2017 in Nicaragua, women's soccer, El Salvador. I think that was 16 or 18, somewhere around there.
They all blend together now.
Yeah.
They do. And then women's golf, last year we went to Scotland as well. And other than COVID year, right, with those 2 years where things were shut down, we've gone somewhere every year. And for me, and that is part of Lipscomb's fabric. Like Lipscomb as a university has an entire mission department where all of our students, whether they're an athlete or not, have the opportunity to travel abroad and be a part of a mission trip within any of the areas they are studying. So we have medical missions, engineering missions, nursing missions, all the things, like you go on and on, which is really incredible. So to have that already integrated into the fabric of the university and the structure of the university, to then have athletics and our experience with the Charlotte Eagles. We went to Rwanda, Ethiopia with the men's team. Was that 2002? I don't remember, somewhere early on. And then for me, I went to, in 2005, I went to Southeast Asia. And then in 2011, I went to Germany. So we both had encountered using sport as a platform abroad where you drop a ball and it automatically bridges connection. You may not speak the same language, you may not speak the same religion, but you at least are seeking to just play and just to be people and to be a fellow human amongst another human. And I know for me personally, traveling abroad and just encountering so many different cultures, it really, in a beautiful way, just opened my eyes and helped me have compassion for humanity. Like we're all people with a story who are trying to figure out life, and to use a passion or a sport as a connector. It's probably just been one of my favorite things to witness when you see these, young adults step into a world or young people step in, or old people for that matter. It's really sweet. And I know for me, one of the kind of highlights was 2 or 3 years ago, one of the goalkeepers who I had the privilege to coach and walk with, she was with another gal and they were there. And so I'm no longer on this trip, but I'm looking and watching from here as they're over in El Salvador, and they baptized one of their teammates. Wow. And it was this full circle moment for me where I'm like, to know that girl's story and to know where she was and to now see where she's at, and here she is leading empowering, discipling, and now even baptizing a fellow sister in the Lord, uh, was, I mean, to the point of like, what a win. Like, that's not my win, that's a kingdom win. But the privilege to have had an opportunity to have a front row seat in that person's journey while they were here, and to now see them walking that out and living it out in such a way, was just such a sweet, like, in the moment, it brought me to tears, and it was just such a joyful, rich, like, yes, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I could go on and on. There's a lot. I mean, as I unpack that, I'm like, oh, and this one, and oh, and that one, and there's multiple.
Yeah.
Praise God that there's multiple.
Yeah.
But,
that's incredible. And you both are doing an incredible work. And I just want to encourage you any way I can. I mean, just seeing the results and the outcomes of this, there's no doubt that God's hand is all over, your ministry on the field. And, you both had touched on it too. When you go on these trips, or even when you bring players into your program, they may not truly believe, in God, but they listen to you because you speak the game of sport, whatever it's soccer, golf, whatever, but you speak it with excellence. And so I can share Christ all day long, but if I don't, speak the game in excellence and don't compete with excellence, they may not want to listen to me. But when you come out there, you're like, it's almost like I'm going to beat you in Jesus' name. And I'm going to do everything within the game allows to play as hard as I can. It just opens this respect level where they're inclined to listen to what you may have to say, or, you may tackle someone on the field, but you lend a hand and pick them right back up. That might be different than other teams. And those moments open the door for you. So it's so cool to hear then the full circle of, someone getting baptized on the team too. It even like makes me teary eyed just hearing the story and seeing the emotion through you guys. It's a really cool thing. And so, Shannon, you coached with Kevin for a few years on soccer, and then you actually made the transition to women's golf. Tell us a little bit about that transition and, what God was teaching you through that season.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, it could be a podcast in and of itself to fully answer that. But in a nutshell, as a goalkeeper coach and as a goalkeeper myself, I grew up playing golf. I grew up in Arizona, actually, but I really just have a heart to encourage people. And so I had the opportunity to step in, and where I was kind of walking alongside some of our coaches, and apparently it turns out I'm one of the oldest females now on staff at Lipscomb, which is hard to believe. We're on the other side now. But all that to say, I was mentoring the head coach, who was the women's golf coach prior, and a sweet friend of mine. And as I was walking alongside of her and walking with some of the players and realizing, like, man, like, so much of what they're doing is so similar to what I've encountered as a goalkeeper coach, which is an individual on a team sport. They wrestle with seeing their performance measured on a scorecard or a scoreboard. You are wrestling with the highs and the lows. You have a high moment and then a low moment, a high moment, hopefully multiple high moments. But to really recognize, like, I just have such compassion and empathy for, like, nobody ever sets out to do poorly, right? Like, nobody wants to do bad. And, I just, now as a mom and sitting, with my own kids and watching their own journey, it's just been this recognition of, like, man, everybody wants to do well. So how do I help come alongside of them and bring that out of them? How do I reassure them? How do I cultivate that courage, that confidence, that strength to step up to that shot or to step up to that moment and make the play? And so transitioning from coaching soccer, as I stepped into assisting the head coach who was here prior to me, I basically was just walking and talking and doing life, which is exactly what I was already doing in spiritual formation, but now it's just on a golf course between shots. And so as I was doing that, there was a bit of this like epiphany of like, oh wow, this works. Like, I just get to walk, talk, and encourage them. And yes, we're, formulating a thought process, we're managing, the course, we're making sure that we're setting up the shot that we, want to execute. I say we, like, I don't swing a club, they're the ones hitting it. But I want to help them just be in a space mentally and emotionally where they can commit physically to taking that shot. And so as I started to get to do that a little bit more, I then ended up really feeling compelled. Really, it felt so out of left field that I was like, Lord, I feel like you're calling me into golf, but this makes no sense. Like on paper, this makes zero sense. And a lot of people helped point that out to me as well, which did not help my confidence. But
Okay. Yeah.
I could not shake this drawing in my spirit of like, I think I'm supposed to do this. And so talked with Obi, and it honestly at the time in the season of life and what he needed from another assistant was to really be a more full-time recruiter and a person who could come and go in the way that he needed. And as much as I would have loved to step and fulfill that, it just didn't make sense for our own personal life with our own children at the time. They're now a little bit older, so that's, transitioned into a new season for us. But as I shifted into golf, it really became this sweet spot for me to really live into that wiring, which is I'm an encourager, I'm a leader, I have a heart to really help these people not only know that they're capable as the athlete, but especially know that their life has a way greater purpose that's way beyond anything that they will do on any field. While the field can be a part of that story and a part of the excellence, that's not the end all be all. And so uniquely stepped in, was the assistant coach for a year. And then my sweet friend Jesse, who's now the head coach at another college, got an opportunity and basically got the call like a week before school was starting, right before season. I mean, she announced she was taking that job 3 days prior, and to us having like media day and everything. And
yeah,
I ended up going into our athletic director's office and had a conversation with him. And he asked me to present my case why I thought I could do the job as the interim, which was a humbling but also really exciting moment. And, looking back, God's sovereignty and we talk about favor, and I think that's something I want to highlight. Like, God's favor is on all Christ followers. It's not just one person who happened to figure it out and everything aligned. Like, all of us who are walking in the Lord are favored by him. And sensitively, I say that too, where he wants all people to be walking with him. It's not like this favoritism in the way that our world talks about. But the year that we had last year, the way that season went, it was such evidence of just God's sovereignty, favor, and heart to do what he was going to do. And I just had the privilege to be, guiding the ship alongside of the team.
Yeah, division champions, right?
We were, yes.
Yeah.
We were the Eastern champions. We got to go to the NCAA regional. We won a total of 5 tournaments, which on the collegiate golf side, 5 doesn't sound like a lot, but apparently in golf it was more than usual. And I'm just incredibly honored, and to the players' credit again, right? They're the ones hitting the shot. They're the ones executing the play. All of them, and I've named this with them before, but their grace and their willingness to lean in with me was just such a gift. Like, yes, I helped lead and guide, but those girls, they did it. And I just had the opportunity to get to celebrate them along the way. And it was such a special year. And this year was special too, but
yeah.
Here's something funny for you. Within about a month of her being in golf and ultimately being a head coach, she was like, Obi, you have no idea how well suited I am for this position. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she was like, yeah, it's just like goalkeeping. And then I'm like, what? That makes no sense whatsoever. She was like, everything's between the ears. It's like, as a goalkeeper, it's how you recover from a mistake. In golf, it's how you recover from a bad shot. And she started giving me these parallels. I'm like, oh my goodness, you actually are going to be an amazing golf coach. Not to mention, she's got a master's in counseling, a master's in divinity. Like, she is so well equipped to just help these girls be their best. And I think that's her superpower, is she helps them be their best. She doesn't get in their way. She's affirming, encouraging, and boom, that just frees a player up to be successful.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. And I want to read this quote that, I got from Golf Channel. If you're if you're asking, what does sports ministry or competing biblically look like, and how do you pour into these players? I mean, Shannon, this is one of the coolest quotes I'm just going to read it straight off so you can. So you're on a Zoom meeting when you're breaking the news to the players that the coach is leaving, and you're now the person in charge. Here's what you told the players. I'm sure you remember word for word, but I believe in you. I truly believe we've all been selected for such a time as this. I'm committed, I'll see this through, and I truly believe that each of you have the talent and ability to do this thing. But there's also a really special opportunity that we have to be united and step forward together. I mean, that's goosebumps. There's nothing in there that says we're going to win a championship. There's nothing in that says all of you are going to break all the records, which you guys broke a lot of records that season. But everything about that is just believing and filling the person and being, relational, which is, obviously your strength. And so, Kevin, watching your wife walk into that, I mean, how cool of that is that as a husband to see that? But how do you guys on a continual basis, continue to speak life into each other and to fill each other's cups when you're constantly outpouring into others?
Oh, yeah. No, well, yeah, that's the challenge. I think it's the beauty and the challenge, right? Because we've got conflicting schedules, and she's recruiting, I'm recruiting. We're in a season now that it's become easier because our children are old enough that they can drive and they can get themselves places. But we just bounce our situations off each other, and I think it helps us make more sound decisions, more in tune with what the Lord would want kind of decisions. Because even though we're different sports, it's the same ultimate heartbeat we have. It's like we want to be successful, yeah, but more successful in the Lord's eyes. So that means, how do we serve our team? How do we do it in recruiting? How do we do it in the day by day? So yeah, that for me it's become, as she's gone into golf, a really cool. She's asking me, okay, the portal's open. How do I, proceed? What kind of things have you been saying? And I'm able to share that and maybe give her a little bit of confidence going into that. And then vice versa. I'm telling her, hey, we've got these couple girls. Here's her strength. Here's her strength. What do you think? And she gives me information that I'm able to be like, oh yeah, wow, that makes total sense. Something I would have never been able to land on by myself. So it's just been awesome. I feel like, yeah, her being in a different sport versus us being in the same sport in some regards has, I think, helped sharpen one another, as iron sharpens iron. She's made me a better coach. I've hopefully, maybe not so much, have helped her become a better coach.
For sure.
And it's been neat. It's been really fun too.
Yeah. I mean, as parents, so our kids are 17 and almost 15, and it's been fun to walk with them and to journey. In a lot of ways, we're coaching our kids, not in the sense on the field. We're not, well, uniquely you will get to, but, this shift for me doing golf, it was definitely like a shift for our family. Like, I was on the road, I think over 50 days this year, which is quite a lot. And I every time I'm on the road, or every time I would leave when our kids were little and I would do that 1 week on a mission trip, for me, it was this awareness of like, yes, you have the mom guilt as people talk about, but there's also this like sensitivity of like, I also feel really called and compelled to do this. And finding that balance, I think if anything, we've just found a way to be more intentional with each other. So uniquely, like, people, think, oh, you'll be an empty nester when your kids both go off to college. But now that they can drive and they're doing life, we're like, I feel like we find ourselves home on the weekend together when we're both in town. Like, hey, it's just us. So, we're more intentional. We're sharing meals together. We're, checking
playing golf. We're playing golf together.
There you go.
Which is honestly how it all started back in the day.
Yeah.
We're just more, and it's sweet. We've been married 21 years. So there's also just this sensitivity and connection of, we know each other. And I was just sharing with somebody the other day, like, the parallel of walking with the Lord and then walking with your spouse. The deeper you get into it, yes, it can get uglier and harder in moments, but it also can become really incredibly rewarding and sweet. Like I would never want to go back to the beginning with my walk with Jesus, because the depth and the connection and the understanding and the trust that's been developed in knowing the Lord, I mean, it's just deeper, sweeter, right? Now, has there been doubts? Has there been moments of wrestle? Has there been moments of disappointment, frustration? Absolutely, because we live on this side of heaven. And then in that same parallel with marriage, I would never want to go back to the first, day of us starting out as newlyweds, because of the depth, the connection, the trust, the sweet moments, the hard moments, the journey that we've been on. There's a real partnership. And so I think, if I had to put one word on it, is that there's a mutual respect that we have for each other. There's a depth of really valuing what the other brings to the table. And there are definitely times I drive him crazy, and there's definitely times he drives me crazy, but that's marriage and that's life. And, the opportunity to keep doing it together has been really special, or alongside of each other. So,
yeah, that's such a good word, Shannon. Thank you. So, kind of coming a little bit back to the sports side, if there's people listening that have an idea of starting something like the program that you guys have, whether it be high school, whatever level they may be at, what encouragement would you give to a coach or a player to kind of pursue what it means to, compete biblically and instill that into your program?
Yeah, I would say it's worth it 100%, because there's so many coaches out there at every level, from youth to college to pro. It's just that the sports landscape has become so transactional. It's how can I use my players to make me look good? And again, that's just, there's no true joy in that. But when you say, okay, how can we come together to play this sport to glorify God, and see the golf course or the soccer field as a place of worship, man, it just allows it to be so much better. There's really no other way to say it. It allows you to play in freedom. It allows you to play in joy. The component of fear that is kind of weaved through so many sports out there can be eliminated, and it's made it for me, because I coach. I mean, I've been at Lipscomb for 12 years, but I had a career for another 16 years before that at non-faith-based institutions. And man, just the joy you can have leading young men, leading young women in sports. It's just incredible. Yeah. And the impact, it's worth it. There are going to be challenges along the way, as with most things in life, but I would say lean into it, do it, because in the end, if you're not doing it for a transcendent purpose, winning a championship within a day or two, it's forgotten. You're forgotten. And, so why don't you do it for an actual purpose that matters, would be my encouragement.
Yeah. I would say be willing to be misunderstood would be probably the first statement I'd issue, which is people will not all get it. Like, you could be so passionate and so excited and have this vision and cast it, and even cast it well. And some people will really get on board, and it's exciting. There's also going to be a lot of people that look at you and be like, no, like, no, thanks. I also think there's an aspect of, like, you could have such a sweet opportunity. And again, for me, coming out of playing at a Power 5 school, I love my opportunity at Arizona. That could also be a whole nother podcast, but the reality of what our world paints to be the end all be all in sport. It is such a paradox in the kingdom of God when you really look at the reality of, like, where the depth of joy, where the depth of life-giving sources are. It's often not always the biggest, brightest name under the lights. And yet in that too, there's such an incredible opportunity to shine a bright light on the most powerful name, which is Jesus. And so that, like, it's a really interesting kind of dichotomy or wrestling match of like everything in my flesh says this, but everything in my spirit, it's that, and I think there's going to be I call it kind of the beautiful undoing, or my knowing interrupted, where it's this sense of like everything I've known that I've been cultivated as an athlete to know from a sport worldly lens is being undone to then be renewed and remade into the likeness of Christ, which is exactly what Jesus is about. And the gift of what God does is that there's an abundance to it, and there's this multiplication to it, and there's this, life-giving, ongoing opportunity. And so, for anybody who's out there that wants to do this, my encouragement would be, first, continue to just grow in knowing Jesus. John 17, Jesus, specifically prayed for you to know him on the face-to-face level like that. And you're like, well, wait, he's a spirit. Like what? Like, how do we do that? And we could go into that a lot more, but essentially what that means is grow in knowing him as if you are doing life right alongside of him, because he is doing that. I personally, I'm a certified spiritual director, but I meet with a spiritual director about every 4 to 6 weeks personally, and have for the last 5 years. And that has been an absolute game changer for me. It's a safe place to have a listening companion who's not only listening and processing your journey, but they're intentionally trained to help draw you back into the awareness of God in your journey. As a leader, you need somebody who can help calibrate you in that space. It's also going to take courage. God brought me to the book of Joshua when I first started to consider shifting into golf. And I mean, just reading Joshua 1 by itself, and Joshua 1:9 was always a personal verse. I always had that verse written on my goalkeeper glove, which, states, be strong and courageous. But I think so often as Christ followers, we think, oh, once I've achieved this or I've gotten there, I will no longer feel fear. I will no longer feel insecure. I will no longer feel fill in the blank. And unfortunately, the truth is, no, you will still feel all of those things because you're human. But through the power of the Spirit, we have the opportunity to really lean into the power of Christ and to rest in the power that he provides and the identity that he gives us. Quite honestly, this last year, while we still had a great season, I had to remind myself, God's called you to this. As you waver, as you doubt yourself, as you start to measure yourself in the worldly eyes, yeah, you're going to fall short, but God, the God, the Lord has called you to this, and I need to rest in that. And as much as I would love others to affirm or highlight, bright moments, I've just had to keep going back to renewing my mind in Christ and allowing him to be, the fuel, the source. I will also say just prayer. Like, we talk about recruiting. I'm incredibly aware that there's so many players out there that are talented. There's so many incredible families. I think that's probably been one of the hardest things as you start to do this with this kingdom lens, and you start to have other fellow believers come, into your program who are excited, or they're coming to your camps, or they're coming, into your life where you're like, they're amazing. I would love to have them on their team, but I only have so many roster positions. And that's been another space where I've thankfully been able to witness OB's leadership in that capacity. But I would love for everybody, to be on this team. And in that same breath, I also have to be very selective in who I think God's revealing. And there's so many moving parts to selecting a player for a roster. Half of it's timing, half of it's what's the need that this team has, what's the strength or the gift that player provides that this team needs. Like, it's never just only that player. Like, it has to do with a collective whole. And in a lot of ways, that's been a really healthy metaphor for me in my own walk of recognizing God is doing something significantly bigger than me. As much as I'm honored that I'm a part of that story, you're a part of that story, all of us are part of that story. Like, to realize the humbling side of that, of like, Shan, God may not need you in that space, or hey, he's picked somebody else for that, or hey, it's their opportunity now. it's humbling and it can be hard in the moment, but it's also incredibly rewarding when you can look at it from that lens and be like, oh, that's awesome. Like, now it's their turn. Or, oh my goodness, like, look what they're getting to do. Like, having this posture of joy for them instead of it being, you know, a downer of like, oh, that's not me. You know, like, that has also been really just healthy and life-giving to start to see those parallels and realize God's got this thing. Like, we get to do this. It's a privilege, and praise God that he has a greater purpose in what he's doing. I quite honestly pray not to get in the way and to just continue to allow him to do what he's doing, because it's way better when he does it than when I do it. So.
Yeah. And that's such an intentional way of living, to be able to recognize, you know, where the Spirit is leading you. And so many times we try and get in the way, or you have some success and say, okay, I'm going to replicate it again this way. But the next year could need something completely different than the previous year. And to be able to be fluid in your faith and fluid in your walk and be open to where God is leading you. It's hard. I mean, just like you're saying with some of the success and stuff, you know, it does get hard, and God doesn't promise that it's going to be an easy road. So there's lots of challenges and battles that we have to face, but it's all worth it in the end. And, you know, I really appreciate you both coming on here and sharing so much wisdom. I know there's going to be people listening that are so inspired by you two, and truly the power couple that you guys are. So thank you for joining. I'm going to go ahead and pray for you guys in your ministry, if you don't mind, to kind of close us out here.
That'd be awesome.
So, dear Heavenly Father, thank you for Kevin and Shannon. Thank you just for the witnesses they are and the clear hand that you have on their ministry, God. Pray that you'll comfort them, give them peace, give them strength to go through the challenges that they'll have to navigate in the hills and the valleys, in cultivating and continuing to lead these programs. God, I pray for the players that come in contact, that there'll just be a clear difference, that there's something different about this program, and it will plant seeds for them to come to know you through their program. And just, you know, thank you again, God, just for the calling on their lives. And we continue that you'll continue to bless their efforts and bless them as human beings. And we say this all in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you guys again
for having us.
You might not have already realized it, that this podcast is produced by a nonprofit, donor-supported Identity Sports. We're just a little nonprofit producing this podcast in the beautiful loft of a downtown thrift store. We aren't getting paid big bucks like a for-profit business. Nope. We're making this podcast not for money, but because everyone on our team believes in what we do. We give athletes a platform to share their faith and their inspirational stories. But that means that we rely on people like you. If you've been to one of our Tales from the Tour or Tales from the Dugout gatherings, or if you've watched or heard an inspirational story from an athlete who found their identity in Christ, or if this is the first time someone shared or you've come across our podcast, I have a request. I wonder if you'd take a quick minute to do something for us. Get into your browser and search for identitysports.com and find the donate page. It doesn't matter how much you commit, a few dollars or a few hundred. It just matters that you show us that you want us to keep telling these stories. My recommendation, pause this episode, do it real quick before you forget at identitysports.com. You're listening to the Identity Sports Podcast, where we dive into the world of faith, sports, and inspiration with athletes from across the country. I'm your host, Zach Vogel.